Late December 2025, Pokrovsk. The industrial zone sits under a lid of fog so thick it feels poured, not formed. Sound gets damped, shapes lose their edges. The whole city looks like it is trying to hide its own bones. Somewhere behind the grey curtain, engines idle, low and angry. The kind of controlled growl that says nobody wants to be heard, but everyone is ready to be felt. A Ukrainian armoured column moves anyway, because the map is cruel and the industrial zone is worse. It is packed with warehouses, basements and hard concrete angles that turn small groups into problems and big groups into targets. If the Russians take it, Ukrainian soldiers end up in a very bad position, and everybody on both sides knows it. A week earlier, the Russians tried to take this sector the loud way. A column of tanks and APCs pushes along a road beside a tree line like it is reading from an old manual. Another group prepares to attack on quad bikes, like speed alone can outvote artillery. The cameras on Russian helmets capture the confidence. Soldiers riding on top of armor, a heavy machine gun rattling into the trees. The whole thing feeling like a convoy that expects fear to do the work for it. The first Ukrainian drone locks on and strikes the rear of an APC with a precision that feels personal. The impact shows through the screen like a punch through glass. A Russian soldier drops hard, trying to recover while his brain catches up with what his body already understands. Then, more than a dozen drones launch toward the column, not in a dramatic swarm like a movie, but in the efficient way professionals do violence when they have time to prepare. Ukrainian operators pick targets like accountants with a grudge. The Russian APC is forced to stop. Infantry spills into the trees in a chaotic scramble that looks less like tactics and more like panic, wearing camouflage. Another drone arrives, hovers with obscene cam, and drops a munition directly onto the APC. Soldiers try to find cover, but the terrain offers them the kind of cover that only hides you from hope. A radio call comes in, under fire, except the situation is already past under fire and well into inside the fire. Bomber drones join, hovering overhead, dropping again and again, turning the APC into a smoking, torn instrument that can't decide whether it is still a vehicle or just a warning. An infantryman tries to get up after the blast and reports he is wounded, not yet realizing there is no one left to report to. Then, artillery opens on concentrations of motorcycles and quad bikes. A cluster munition goes in first and blankets the area with a sheer amount of force that removes any illusion of control. After that, drones keep working, finishing off immobilized targets with the cold patience of people who understand that a stopped vehicle is just a pre-labeled wreck. First, a tank dies, then 2 APCs. Through the drone camera, the result of thorough preparation appears. The entire column is destroyed. Quad bikes, motorcycles, and armoured vehicles engulfed in flames like someone set the road itself on fire. That kind of preparation, paired with the fact that the coming assault uses an Abrams only once, points to one thing: the industrial zone is worth bleeding for, and the Ukrainians intend to fight for every millimeter. So now they move fast, before the enemy recovers from being routed. The task assigned to the Skola battalion sounds almost impossible in the dry language of operations. Move along an open road, break into urban development, and drive the enemy out of fortified buildings. The Abrams is not designed for combat in these conditions, so additional armor is installed on it. Extra protection bolted on, not to make it invulnerable, but to make it survive long enough to matter. Reconnaissance drones conduct round-the-clock surveillance to locate enemy firing positions and mines. Because in this war, the battlefield is a spreadsheet, and the drones are the people entering data with explosives. And now the time comes. Under the cover of fog, the Ukrainian column rolls out. A tank with a mine-clearing troll leads the way. Immediately behind it comes the Abrams and several APCs carrying infantry. The tactic is simple and bold in the way only desperate courage looks simple. The Abrams stays out front. Its job is to be big, loud, and intimidating, to draw fire onto itself and pull attention away from infantry that needs to get into buildings and stay alive long enough to own them. The mine-clearing tank begins its primary mission, and the road answers with buried teeth. Smoke puffs from the first detonation as the troll triggers a mine. The blast muffled by fog, but still violent enough to kick debris into the air like the ground is spitting. Only a couple of 100 meters remain before entering the city, when another mine meets the column and throws another burst of smoke and grit across the roadway. The lead vehicle keeps going. It has no other religion. It clears obstacles the only way it can, by turning them into noise. When the last of the mines in this short stretch stops answering, the column bursts into the city. The transition feels immediate, like stepping through a door into a smaller, sharper world. Warehouses loom, concrete walls squeeze the road, windows stare like black eyes. The fog breaks into ribbons that drift between buildings, turning everything into close-range geometry. Of course, the Russians come to their senses. They launch drones into the air, and infantry begins moving to more advantageous positions. The defenders don't need to see the whole column. They only need to see one piece of it, long enough to mark it for a drone. A Ukrainian APC blankets everything around with fire, not allowing the enemy to raise their heads. The bursts echo off metal and brick, a harsh staccato that turns alleys into amplifiers. It is suppressive, ugly, and necessary. Every burst buys seconds. Seconds are currency here. Seconds pay for breathing. The Abrams moves a bit further forward, and even through fog, it feels like a presence. Mass, momentum. The implied threat of a main gun that doesn't negotiate. The extra armor on it changes the silhouette into something more brutish, more improvised. Like a modern tank, wearing a welded-together answer to a problem nobody predicted in its design office. It is not graceful, it is practical. It is a promise. The column is not here to peek and retreat, it is here to push. There is a gas station ahead, and it becomes the kind of landmark that turns into a battlefield hinge. The first part of the plan is to deploy infantry near it and clear the area while the Abrams draws attention and provides cover with high explosive shells. Everything goes exactly according to plan, which is rare enough to feel suspicious. The infantry dismounts and begins the assault, moving swiftly because their lives depend on it. Boots hit pavement, bodies flatten against whatever cover exists. The fog helps them by hiding them, then betrays them by hiding the enemy too. They push into the gas station area and encounter the enemy, and they eliminate them in the blunt, close logic of clearing, one corner at a time, one doorway at a time, one breath held until it can be released. The Abrams methodically dismantles fortifications. The gun's work is not flashy, it is industrial. It turns firing positions into rubble, makes walls lose their confidence, and makes the defenders learn that concrete is only solid until it meets a shell that doesn't care about your plans. Each shot is a physical statement. The fog flashes with muzzle blast. The echo rolls back down the street like the city is answering itself. Inside the tank, work is in full swing. The crew operates as a single mechanism, a closed loop of training and muscle memory. The loader rams shell after shell into the breach, not in panic, but in rhythm, as if tempo itself is armor. The turret slews, stops, fires, slews again, and every movement suggests the same thing. This machine exists to keep infantry alive long enough to occupy the ground. And right then, in the middle of doing its main task, the Abrams takes its first drone hit. There is no grand cinematic detonation in the narration. It is simply impact, abrupt violence arriving from the air like a surprise tax. The remarkable part is not the hit, it is the reaction. The crew does not even realize they have been hit. They are so locked into their cycle of scanning, aiming, firing, and loading that the drone strike becomes just another piece of background chaos, swallowed by engine noise and the roar of their own gun. Outside, reconnaissance detects movement of Russian soldiers. They run to the nearest cover and try to hide, small dark shapes vanishing into the industrial clutter. Ukrainian drone pilots react instantly, launching drones into the air. Time for a strike. and it arrives with the ruthless speed that modern systems allow. Find, fix, finish. The threat is eliminated, and the city returns to its baseline soundscape of distant impacts, sharp bursts, and the constant hidden buzz of rotors somewhere in the fog. At headquarters, the work of the infantry is constantly adjusted. The gas station is cleared.
Забаранили. Прием. 200.
And the commander orders movement toward the stela with the inscription Pokrovsk. It is a symbolic marker, but the symbol doesn't matter nearly as much as what it represents: momentum, holding. The ability to say the assault is not stuck at the edge. The ability to say this sector is being taken with hands, not just watched by drones. Infantry shifts positions, slipping from cover to cover, clearing building after building, the way you clear a city when every room might be a trap and every staircase might be watched by a camera in the sky. The APC keeps firing, keeping heads down, drawing attention, trying to make the defenders afraid to expose themselves long enough to guide a drone. The fog churns with dust now, because every impact makes more of it, and the whole area begins to feel like it is filled with powdered concrete and shredded insulation. Then headquarters looks for the Abrams. The tank has disappeared. Not destroyed, not burning, not visibly dead, just not where it is supposed to be. The infantry icons on the mental map keep moving, but the big anchor point is absent. Panic begins at headquarters because, in an operation like this, losing track of your spearhead is how you lose your assault group. The Abrams is not just a machine, it is a focal point that the whole combined push orients around. If it is isolated, the enemy can concentrate. If it is immobilized, the enemy can feast. No one understands where it went. Meanwhile, the Abrams, trying to provide maximum security for the assault group, moves even deeper forward. It is the kind of decision that comes from the right instinct. The more the tank is out front, the more the infantry can move without taking the full weight of enemy attention. The Abrams is built to take hits better than people. It is built to be seen. It is built to be the thing the enemy cannot ignore. And the infantry takes advantage of it exactly as intended, moving safely from cover to cover, clearing building after building, with the tank's presence pulling the enemy's gaze like a magnet. But the Ukrainians are not the only ones taking advantage. Russian drones are already flying toward their main target. This is the modern counterattack. Not a wave of armor, not a dramatic infantry surge, but a stream of small, cheap, precise machines that only need one good angle to turn a tank into a problem. The fog does not stop drones. If anything, it helps them, because it hides their approach until the last second, and by the time you hear them, it is already too late to negotiate. The drones come in low, using buildings as cover, slipping through the industrial maze like rats that learned to fly. And there it is, another precise hit on the Abrams. This one lands like a punch to the spine of the assault. The Abrams is still there, still imposing, but it has been carved by repeated bites. Each strike takes something away: mobility, systems, confidence. The tank begins to shift from predator to wounded anchor, and the enemy's entire logic is to make it stop. A moving tank is hard to kill cleanly. A stop tank is a pinned insect on a board. The crew fires off the remaining ammunition. This is not a heroic last stand speech. It is procedure under pressure. If the tank is going to be immobilized, it will at least spend everything it has before it becomes a static target. The gun speaks again and again, hammering the nearest threats, suppressing likely firing points, sending high explosives into positions that look like they could be guiding drones. The loader keeps feeding the breach until feeding it stops making sense. The turret keeps hunting until hunting becomes an act of stubbornness instead of an advantage. And then the battlefield forces the ugliest decision, the one that never feels cinematic from inside it. The crew abandons the immobilized tank to save their lives. They do it because human lives matter more than even special weapons like an Abrams, and because a living crew can be reassigned, retrained, and reinserted. A dead crew is just another statistic and another propaganda clip. The Abrams is left behind to be torn apart by enemy drones. And that phrase is not a metaphor. In this kind of fight, once the tank is stuck, drones don't stop at disable. They circle back. They come in again. They test angles. They pick weak points. They chip at it with patient cruelty until the machine is less a weapon and more a carcass. The fog hides the details, but it can't hide the rhythm. Buzzing approach, impact. Smoke, another buzzing approach, another impact, another bloom of dirty grey. At the same time, the Ukrainian command orders the remaining vehicles to withdraw. Withdrawal is not a clean reverse gear in a story like this. It is a careful backing away, while the sky keeps reaching for you. APCs pull back, still firing, still trying to keep enemy heads down, still trying to keep drones from getting easy runs at clustered vehicles. Infantry holds the newly cleared area, securing positions, because the ground is the whole point. The mission is accomplished in the cold operational sense. The area is cleared, the infantry secures their positions, and the AFU gains a favorable sector for force buildup. And the Russians gain yet another topic for propaganda, because an Abrams left behind in a foggy industrial zone is a story that writes itself for anyone who wants to sell a narrative. The industrial district settles into a new, uglier quiet, the kind of quiet where nothing feels resolved, only paused. Smoke hangs low. The road that just swallowed mines and men and machines looks unchanged from a distance, because distances are always kinder than reality. The stela with Pokrovsk still stands somewhere in the grey, indifferent to who bleeds near it. There is no high note here, no clean victory image, no triumphant last shot. There is only the uncomfortable truth of modern war. A giant tank can be made helpless by small drones. A perfect plan can be shredded by one unseen angle. And a city can turn even the loudest machine into something that disappears. The fog keeps moving. The drones keep flying. The industrial zone keeps waiting. Bye for now.